So to continue my exploration of GraphicsMagick within a Lucee CFML context, I wanted to see if I could recreate an algorithm that I typically do with ColdFusion's native CFImage tag, which is to take an image and be able to generate a clipping of it with an annotation. This is something that we do in Vision when we send out notification emails. We generate a clipping which gives a visual context for the comment. And the idea here is that the user would leave a comment and we would generate a portion of that image to include at the top of an email. Now, we don't want to include all of the image, as that would be something we could never create a good user experience around. So instead what we try to do is create a clipping which maximizes the visual context, meaning that we attempt to center the annotation as much as possible, right? So we get as much surrounding images. But as the annotation moves towards the edge of the input image, we have to move the annotation over, otherwise we get a blank area on the top and the right here if we were to keep that annotation centered. So you can see here as I go left and as I go down, right, the annotation moves to the edges, and we have to shift the image in order to maximize the amount of visual context in the clipping. Now, we have to do that, of course, if the input image is larger than the clipping, but if we have a tiny image, right, like maybe something like a mobile phone image, in this case, when I click, what we're going to do is just center the image within the clipping, and then we position the annotation normally or naturally as we would over the image itself. And you can see the image is not moving towards the edge of this canvas. So let's take a look at how this works, because it follows a couple of steps. This is definitely quite a bit more complicated than my previous GraphicsMagick explorations. So first we get the images, the dimension of the image of our input, right? So we get the dimensions of this image so that we can figure out how to start calculating the location of that image within the clipping. Then we have our clipping width, 600 by 300, that's fixed. Our annotation radius, that's the size of this annotation circle here. And now what we have to do is figure out how we want to paste this image into this canvas. Because again, we want to try to keep the annotation as centered as possible, but also keep as much visual context as possible, so that we have to shift it over when there's not enough input image to keep the annotation centered. So essentially what I'm trying to do, and I'll leave it up to you to look at the comments and the math here, but essentially I figure out what the horizontal paste value will be, then I figure out what the vertical paste value will be, and then that allows me to paste the image into the canvas using the draw operation. So now let's take a look at what we're actually doing at the GraphicsMagick level. So first we want to create a new canvas of the clip width and the clip height, right? Those are the hard-coded clip dimensions that we have here. And we're going to fill that canvas using the inbuilt checkerboard pattern. So GraphicsMagick ships with a number of inbuilt images which we can reference using the image colon notation. So we're going to say we're going to use the inbuilt image checkerboard and we're going to tile it. Now, out of the box, that checkerboard is actually pretty dark, right? If I comment this out and we go back to our small example here, you can see this checkerboard by default is really dark. But luckily, we can use the opaque command or utility to lighten those colors. So what I'm saying next is I want to find the 66 and the 999, which is what these colors are, and I want to replace those colors with lighter colors, FD and CA, right? So now if I refresh, boom, we get our lighter checkerboard colors. Then we're going to draw our image onto the canvas. Now this is a little bit more involved here. So what we're saying is we're going to draw over, which means that it's basically just going to composite the two, pasting the input over the canvas. We're going to be pasting it at the XY coordinates, and those are the coordinates that we calculated up here to figure out how to best center the annotation. Then we're going to paste it with these dimensions, and I'm just going to use the natural dimensions of the input image. I believe we can affect these to actually scale the image as we paste it, and then here's the file path to the input image. Now we want to apply our annotation, the actual circle, and to do that we just set the fill and the stroke parameters, and then we draw the annotation. Now, I'm actually using sort of a compound operation here for the single draw using the semicolon, and what that's going to do is it's going to translate the coordinate system for this draw command. So this translate doesn't affect anything else. It's scoped to this draw command, and essentially what we're going to be doing is translating the XY coordinates of the canvas to the location in which we pasted the image, right? Because sometimes, let's go back to our normal here, right? If we try to annotate something down in the bottom right, this top left corner of the canvas is actually like all the way down here in the input image, right? So when I click, let's say this is like 500, 400 XY, on the input, it's actually like, let's call it, 450, 200, right? So we can't use the normal XY if we're using the canvas coordinates. So instead, we translate the coordinate system to match the location of the pasted input image, and at that point, our XY coordinates match what the XY coordinates were on the input image. And then we just draw the XY and then the matching XY, and this is not supposed to have pound signs there. And then at that point, we just output our file path, and then there's some stuff here that's kind of just utility stuff, and then ultimately here we are outputting that file if we had the XY coordinates. And there you go. So again, allowing the user to click in an image here, annotating the image in a clipping canvas of a different size in an attempt to best center that image and that annotation within the clipping. But of course, shifting that image over to provide maximum visual context when we can't position it quite in the center. So really enjoying GraphicsMagick, very powerful, and I'm looking forward to see what else I can do, what other kinds of native CFImage tag functionality I can perhaps replace with this command line utility.